Frances-Hodgkins has made a strong relationship between her hair and her dress,
Yes.
and the lighting. Just if you look on the edge of her face and her hair,
Yes.
and her hands, it's very delicately
Yes.
done.
Frances-Hodgkins is widely considered to be our most significant expatriate painter. Most of her work was painted in Britain and Europe. In New Zealand, she's identified most closely with her Dunedin birthplace. But she does have a Kapiti connection. It's through her sister, Isabel, who settled in Waikanae, and a young auburn-haired woman called Alice.
She was born on May the 8th, 1891, at probably Wellington, but they lived at Parramatta, and her father was an Italian fisherman. Moved the family to the far end of Macra Beach, to a beautiful little sheltered cove there, where there was an Italian fishing village. But when Alice was 5, he decided that her 2 elder sisters and she should go to school, which they couldn't do at Macra. So he put them into a boarding house in Wellington, and he came up from Macra in his rowing boat up the Waikanae River and came to Paraparaumu and bought 2 acres of land between Amohia Street and Hinimoa Street, Hinimoa Street being the main street of Paraparaumu then. Luigi did row from the fishing village at Macra up to Waikanae. However, the river isn't where we are standing today. It was further south towards Paraparaumu, and it was deeper, and he was able to row right up almost to his section at Hinimoa Street, Amohia Street, and just carried his possessions over the sandhills. He actually rowed in what we call today a long boat, a double-ended boat, which was his fishing boat. And he loaded it with their possessions and rowed all the way in the open sea up here. He built a rough-hewn cottage for the family, and in August 1896 they all settled in that place in Hinimoa Street, they called it. The girls started school in the 3rd term at Paraparaumu School, which is still going in Ruapehu Street. The land in what is called Ratanui Road, now it used to be called Soldiers Road, and there were soldiers from the war settled there with young children, and Alice's mother used to bake food and give it to her to take down to the poor starving children, because they couldn't make a living on that land. They all walked off. And I often used to joke with her and say to her, well, you were Little Red Riding Hood once again.
In 1905, shortly before Frances-Hodgkins returned to Europe, she visited Paraparaumu to paint. In the course of the visit, she met and painted the 14-year-old Alice. It was an encounter which led to Alice sitting for 2 paintings, Babette, which is now held by the Dowse Gallery in Lower Hutt, and The Goose Girl, one of the 24 Frances-Hodgkins paintings held in the Field collection.
It's got a beautiful vitality and looseness about it, and also the colours are quite expressive of those that she became famous for as a mature painter in the 1930s and 40s. She painted in symphonies of colour, and here we see these beautiful rosy, pinky oranges that she became known for, and also quite an elongated figure, and that lovely face framed by the red hair against this loosely painted backdrop of buildings and trees.
Alice's role in the paintings has since been the subject of newspaper stories and even a book. And when she finally found out about it, it made a big impression on Alice's daughter-in-law, Red Capewell.
I suppose it is emotional, because I am quite proud of it. We, as a family, were all proud of it. We were really quite proud of the fact that Frances-Hodgkins actually painted one of our relatives.
Well, Frances-Hodgkins she was in love with the countryside, with the rural setting. And I've just got a lovely quote here from a letter she wrote to her mother in 1903 in Europe, thinking about coming home possibly and the relationship she had to New Zealand. And she said, "It is my idea of heaven to live on a farm and wake up at sunrise with cows and calves and sheep and pigs and ducks and geese and turkeys, all crying out to be fed, though probably I should be more interested in painting them than feeding them." So she did come home in 1903 and had been planning to actually return to Europe, because on her way home she had met an American writer who had proposed to her. So initially she was doing a farewell tour of family and friends in New Zealand with the intention of returning to Europe to marry this gentleman. But then, in letters that no longer exist, he apparently called the engagement off. So she was in a bit of a state of uncertainty about what to do next. She was facing life as an unmarried woman in her mid-30s with family obligations and wrestling with herself as to her future as a painter and whether, in fact, she did have one. So there was, we think, reading between the lines, a certain despair. But anyway, she embarked on a painting holiday with her very good friend Dorothy Kate Richmond, and they came to the Kapiti coast and stayed in Paraparaumu near the farm of her sister Isabel and brother-in-law Will Field.
Well, she and her friend Dorothy were staying at Mrs. Pudney's guest house at the end of a mohair street, just before the railway line, and asked if there was any boys handy who could carry her easel for her to paint the scenery around.
Hello.
Hello, I'm Capewell.
Hello, I'm Linda. Come
hi,
on in.
Linda.
Come in. This is the old Pudney guest house.
Ah, I believe, yes.
Yes,
This
come
is where
on.
Frances-Hodgkins stayed.
Yes, it is. And her friend Dorothy. Come sit down. Nice to meet you.
Yes, it's nice
There's
to
a
meet
lot of history around this house and your family.
Yes, my mother-in-law was the goose girl that Frances-Hodgkins painted
Beautiful.
in a section across the railway line. Frances was told to go across the road to the Baretti house because there were 4 girls there and surely one of them would carry her easel. Well, she knocked on the door and Alice Baretti answered, and she had her hair all tucked up in a tam o' shanter, beautiful Italian auburn hair, but she didn't like it because she got teased. But there was a strand hanging down, and she said that she would probably carry the easel. But then Frances-Hodgkins said to her, "I'd like to paint you. I don't think I want to go up the hill. I'd like to paint you." Well, Alice said no, because she was a very shy person, but her mother came on the scene and she had to agree to be painted. Frances had pulled her tam o' shanter off to see her beautiful hair, and so came the painting called Babette. But Alice said, "You mustn't paint my own face in it. You can paint me, but not my face. However, when you see it, it is practically Alice's face." That was that day, and it was done. She never told anyone about it. Then a couple of days later, Frances came back. She wanted to go to the beach to paint the scenery, and Alice, and we always called her Nana, was playing outside in the backyard, and Frances said, "Oh, I'd just love to paint you sitting there on that dog kennel." So she sat her up there. Nana couldn't run away, she had to be painted, and there were ducks flying around, but they were called geese, and so there naturally came the Goose Girl. And that was the beginning of that. Then Alice did carry her easel down many times down to the beach to do scenery down there. It was over a week. Alice was just so shy and she didn't want to be painted. She would have run away. It wasn't her nature to be out in the public. But her mother was very firm and said she had to do what she was told. So that's how, as I say, Babette arrived, and then 2 days later the Goose Girl. She didn't argue about the Goose Girl.
Alice married Albert Capewell at the age of 23 and had 6 children, including Red's late husband, Des.
I first met her in about 1950 at Parramatta. She was at her elder daughter's house, and I was introduced as her son's girlfriend. She was quite shocked that he was with such a young person, which I wasn't really as young as I looked, but very nice, but had a very abrupt tongue. She still had her beautiful auburn hair and beautiful brown eyes, which I guess was from the Italian side. She was a sturdy woman. A very learned, busy lady, a very good housewife, very orientated with her family. I was amazed that she didn't learn to knit till she was in her 40s. She could crochet, but she couldn't knit. She had a spread out family. She had 3 children in about 3.5 years. When the eldest one was 11, she had twins and didn't know she was having twins, had them at home. She told me that she heard the doctor say, "Don't tell her there's another one coming or she'll pass out." And it was the second, and my husband was the second of the twins. But because they were in business in Otaki, that was in the early hours of the morning. By 9 o'clock in the morning, there was another bassinet and enough clothes for both the children at the back door. Then 6 years later, she had another daughter. So her family was well spread out, but she was very proud of them. I think if she had gone to college, she would have made an excellent school teacher. She was very, very well read. She read incessantly. In her early years, she did take a lot of interest in the Anglican Church in Otaki and was in the women's group and that sort of thing. However, when she was expecting the last baby, she was a little ashamed of being pregnant in her 40s, so she wouldn't go anywhere unless father took her in the car. So she opted out of a lot of the local activities.
You can see in the portrait, Babette, that she was quite shy.
Yes.
Yes. And you even get a sense of it here.
Yes, she's sort of looking like a little bit coy, if you like. Yes. We were all at her house in Otaki for her 70th birthday, and the Evening Post came and someone was looking through it and said, "Oh, look at this, Mum, look at this painting." And she then sort of hung her head and said, "Well, that's me." And it was just, "Mum, why didn't you tell us?" "Oh, I didn't think anyone would want to know." So from then on, we took more interest, and the Babette was on show at the Douse Art Gallery, and I took her eldest daughter over to have a look at it. That's when we found it really had traces of her face on it. It was just so clear. It was such a defined painting. We never knew about the Goose Girl. Didn't know about that for years. She didn't even tell us about that. We accosted her and said, "Well, she came back," and she used to go with her hands like that, and she said, "Well, she came back and I had to sit there and do it." We thought, well, they're ducks, not geese. But we thought that it was very appropriate. It was very much of their backyard. as my husband used to visit that house when he was little, and he said that's what it was like. The Mahara Gallery had the Goose Girl on show, was a Frances-Hodgkins display many years ago now, and we came up, I can't remember how we got an invitation to the special opening, and then we came back later with that display to take a photo and got told we couldn't. However, when my husband Des said, well, that's my mother, we were allowed, we had Nana and the Goose Girl, my husband, our daughter and her daughter in the photo, but I took it and I blurred it. So unfortunately, we've lost it. But we all got excited about it to think that that was done here in Paraparaumu, and it was Nana. It was really quite, we thought it was an honour. And we thought the painting was typically of her clothes that she wore at that time.
Alice Capewell lived to be 97. Still
Gardening when she's 90, growing her own potatoes and beans and carrots. A very fiercely independent lady until she started falling over, and then she had to rely on people helping her to get up. Loved visitors, and she had friends who used to bring her books from the library to keep her occupied. She loved crosswords. By this time, her hair had really gone to just a light cap at the top. We used to wonder about how she kept the colour on the sides, because you often go grey on the sides. And one day we went to visit, and there was the hairdresser dyeing the sides of her hair. She was mortified that we found out.
The Goose Girl is one of the best-known works in the Field collection, which contains 44 paintings, 24 of them by Frances-Hodgkins.
So, Red, you were saying you think this painting of Alice is very true to her as she was?
That's as I would perceive that she was, having not met her for a good few years after that, but from what I heard from the family, her sisters and her mother, no, I didn't meet her mother, her sisters, I'd perceive that to be almost true of her, yes.
The Goose Girl is a key work in the Field collection, which she painted after having made her first trip to Europe, when she was away for a couple of years, between 1901 and 1903. She travelled widely and seen a lot of interesting work, and came back and started painting, I think, in a way that indicates a move towards her mature style, which is quite fresh and expressive and loose for a painter of figures in landscapes and watercolour.
The Field collection holds the largest number of Hodgkins paintings outside Te Papa and the city collections in Dunedin, Auckland and Christchurch. The former director of the New Zealand Portrait Gallery, Avenel McKinnon, is a Frances-Hodgkins specialist. She's described the collection as unique in not only the insight it offers into Frances-Hodgkins' work, but also the art world of the time that nurtured her.
Within this core of 24 works is found the essential early Frances-Hodgkins, from which her later works would spring. As a collection, these paintings should never be underestimated for what they reveal to us about the nature of her beginnings as an artist, her complex relationship with her family, especially her sister Isabel, and the artistic taste of New Zealand during her lifetime.
The works are here because Waikanai became the family home. When she wrote about Waikanai, Frances used the word ancestral to describe it. Fittingly, her ashes were interred in the family plot in Waikanai Cemetery when they were returned from Britain. The trust which administers the Field collection promised it to Mahara Gallery on condition that the gallery is upgraded to museum standard. But over some 20 years, the process has encountered a number of roadblocks along the way. Now the field collection trustees have indicated they need to see rapid progress, or Kapiti risks seeing the collection permanently housed in some other part of the country.
I'm very strong about the field collection staying in Kapiti because it's a Kapiti person who was painted in Kapiti, locally here, by such a famous person. I think that it's how many other people here have been painted by a famous person. Let's keep it here.
If you are interested in finding out more about the field collection and the upgrade of the gallery to house it, contact gallery staff or visit the Mahara Gallery website.
Well, we looked into the history of her father's family because we just wanted to know more about the background. And 2015, my son went to Italy to see if he could find some relatives. The grandfather sailed from the port of Pesaro in Italy, northern Italy, but I think we've traced now that he lived in a little fishing village, relating it to Porirua to Parramatta, and Porirua being Pesaro. But we're having trouble. The name Baretti is quite common. We're having trouble getting to the right line. We think my son has found one relation about the same generation as he, so that's quite good. We just wanted to find out because he worked hard for the family. He fished all his life, but we we knew a lot about the English side, but we just wanted to go into the other side.